It's going to be one of those recording types of days.
Leap day.
But she needed to laugh. We had this big debate earlier. Not a debate, but like she actually came to my side of things pretty quickly. If it happens on February 29th, then it never really happened.
Does it count?
Because we've gotten gut punches all morning. And it's just like, you know what? But it's not a real day. So maybe it doesn't count. And then we'll wake up tomorrow and be like, oh, different news and positive things.
Just reply back to those things that were the gut punch. Be like, let's try
Not
that
today.
again tomorrow.
Not today. Listen,
Let's
I'm going to let you give this a rethink,
Not
Mr.
today,
So-and-so,
Satan.
and let you change your mind and make the right decision tomorrow on an actual day, March 1st. Thank you.
And done.
And with that,
If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
welcome to the Escape Pod, a part serious, part hilarious podcast about escaping all the things. We're
February 29th.
trying to escape Leap Day.
Yeah.
Yep. It's where we are, folks. I'm Julie.
I'm Charity. And with us today, we have our common potato, a.k.a. production assistant, a.k.a. podcast promoter extraordinaire, Karabeth.
Yes.
Yeah, welcome.
KB in the house. So glad to
this
be
happened
here.
because when I was researching this story like a month ago or whatever, I just happened to be on the phone with KB and she's like, "What are you working on?" And I start telling her about this and she just started making comments that were making me laugh. So it's going to be a good time.
I hope they come out.
We've got a stack of quarters. We'll just pop quarters in KB and
Yes.
just let her go.
Katie's bringing the fun today.
Yeah.
Let's hope
Katie,
so.
this morning I thought I would describe you as my better half in my work verse because we work together on lots of things on a regular basis. And I always feel like the things I'm bad at, she's amazing at, and she's not bad at anything. So
Oh,
she helps with all the things. But
Well, we won't talk about T-shirts.
Rude. You're so rude. That's it. I'm out. Bye.
what are we referring to?
Are you kidding
Oh
me?
my gosh.
Which T-shirts?
Best word ever that Karabeth created.
The emerging.
Oh, was that you?
That was me.
Oh, shoot.
I mean, I'm not taking credit for that alone.
No, a lot of people
Somebody
missed
should have
the boat
caught
on that.
Yes.
Somebody.
yes.
I mean,
But it was funny, and I love how she can laugh about
Oh,
it.
yeah.
So the word emerging was emgurging
Oh, yeah. Emgurging.
I'm
on a
gurging.
T-shirt to live for all eternity. Before we get to the story, what are we escaping from today, Charity?
Well, I think we already established
Leap Day.
February 29th, the non-real.
Well, I don't know if KB
Illusion
had
Day.
as bad of a start to Leap Day as we did. Are you escaping from anything in particular?
Oh, well, I had to get all dressed up in green, and she asked me to color her hair green. So she looks like a big booger today, basically. And I did kind of tell her that, which was not like that was
did
kind
you
of a
crush
mom
her
fail.
little spirit?
Well, I mean, a little.
Or she's
but
like,
she's
I don't
fine.
care.
was
I know
like,
what I have
I was all,
confidence in myself,
okay.
lady. Listen,
I go, you're not alone. Everybody else in your class is going to wear green. It's okay.
It's
You'll all
just
look
Green
like
Day at their
boogers.
school. It's
Well, I think that's why I was trying to put two and two together. I'm like, so this is for Leap Day? And I was like,
Instead
what
of
does it
St.
make it green?
Patrick's
And I was
Day.
like, are you guys, because that's, St. Patrick's Day is right around the corner. And I'm like, are you playing leapfrog? Like, I don't understand where the green comes from. But again, like my other daughter
maybe
asked
it's
me the other
color
day.
therapy. The teacher just needs to see a sea of green, and that's her favorite jam or something.
Maybe.
alrighty.
I don't
There
know.
you go. And with that, Charity, what true crime craziness are we talking about today?
Well, it's a little bit of a different direction today. So, we've done stories about children and women getting victimized, mostly by men, right? That seems to be a very common theme, a very prevalent theme. But we've not done a female serial killer before. Those do exist. And this one I picked because I feel it underscores the prevalence of vulnerable people getting preyed upon.
Mm-hmm.
And this is completely this woman's MO. And simply because they might have some kind of disadvantage where they don't know how to advocate for themselves, or they have nobody or no family looking out for them. And And, you know, or mental issues that our society still does not do a great job of helping people through and beyond. So this is one of those stories that stuck with me. I watched all the sources, again, will be in the show notes, but I did watch a documentary on this on Netflix called The Worst Roommate Ever, Call Me Grandma. So a lot of this comes from that, as well as other sources, because it starts out with an actual social worker. Her name is Judy, searching for her missing client.
Okay.
And this guy just grabbed my heart from the word go. And it really, really pissed me off. So I dug in with, I've already made up my opinion on this woman and just
you dove
dug
in.
in.
With grit.
Yeah. So, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so 1980s. You were both alive, right?
The best decade ever.
Best decade ever.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, no, I wasn't. I was like,
You weren't alive.
I was totally not alive. Yeah, I was born in like 1991, and I know nothing.
Okay. Wow.
I'm so glad we invited her today.
Now all the 1990 kids hate me. Sorry, I was in the 1990s too. I was right there in the thick of it. I love you all.
All right,
Sorry.
Sacramento, California. So police begin searching for Alvaro Burt, they called him, Montoya. He was a 51-year-old who had developmental disabilities and suffered from schizophrenia. His social worker had grown worried after losing contact with him for a couple of weeks. And this is the same social worker who'd helped him gain a bed at a boarding house operated by this Dorthea Puente, who this story is about. He had been in and out of shelters and living on the streets prior to this. So they showed footage of this man in the documentary interacting with the social worker. I guess she went around with the camera crew. Really cool. But he looked like he was the sweetest man ever who'd had just a hard life. He was born in Costa Rica, moved to the United States when he was 16, and he started displaying signs of schizophrenia about that same time. So a lot of big life changes when he came to the United States. And his parents did the best they could to help him. They even put him in a mental institution, but the doctors just did shock therapy, very primitive types of things, didn't help him. And when he got out, he didn't go home or tell his family, probably because of his experience in there. That's my conjecture, I don't know if that's a fact or not, but I imagine that it was a horrible experience for him. So he didn't tell anybody. He just pieced out and he was relegated to living on the streets and somehow ended up at a detox facility in Sacramento, even though he was not an alcoholic. So he didn't use drugs. He wasn't a drinker. He just was this sweet. Can you see my... Here, I'm going to move this mic for a minute. Look at this guy. Can you see him?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He just looks like an older gentleman.
Like Santa Claus's brother or something.
Yeah,
like just a sweet man, just
he does look sweet.
happy cheeks and a happy smile and all that kind of a thing. So staff really liked him, but they were afraid to refer him to other homes because they were afraid he wouldn't be treated well because of his challenges. And he repeatedly fell out of compliance with his meds because he said they made him feel sick. And, that's pretty common. And he also said that the meds did not make the voices in his head go away.
Oh, shoot.
So it made it very, very, very difficult for him to stay stabilized. So the day social worker Judy, we'll call her, said she was going to try to find him a boarding house, this was on video. And you should have seen this smile light up this guy's face. It was absolutely precious. I mean, he had hope. He was like, yeah, that sounds better than being in a home. So she did her homework and she found a wonderful woman who takes excellent care of her clients. So this was a woman who was loved by her community. She gave away food. She gave away clothing. She donated to campaigns and causes. She was a pillar of the community, a philanthropist. So she had a good gig going. This was Dorthea Puente. She was running a boarding house where people could actually afford to live. So she had an old, really cool Victorian-style house. She lived in the upper level, and then the lower level she had turned into rooms where her boarders could stay. And she would cook for them and blah, 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 and sometimes even become like the signator for any of the resources or disability checks or Social Security or anything that they had. So Judy goes down there and kind of interviews some of the I almost called them guests, some of the tenants there. And she knew one of them. His name was John Sharp, and he told her it was a nice place with nice food. So Judy was like, okay, I'm sold. So she helped Bert get hooked up with Social Security so he could cover room and board, and they moved him into Dorothea's house. He started thriving when he was there. He made friends. He had his own recliner and his own bed, and he told Judy he really liked living there. But Judy wasn't going to just write him off once he found a nice place, right? She kept following up. It was her job. It was her mission. She was going to make sure he was being taken care of. And so she thought it was strange when Dorthea told her all of a sudden that Bert went to Mexico. He left for Mexico after just a few short months after having been in like the best mental state he'd been in, right? So she immediately knew something was wrong. Like, this is not. So she called the police straight up. Nope, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. I'm calling the cops. And then she went and talked to John Sharp again, and he said, well, Bert is not living here anymore. And he told her something was wrong in the house, that Dorthea had been digging a lot of holes lately. Oh, you should have just seen Julie's face. She jumped. Yeah, so, and he's speaking in hushed tones, I'm sure. So the police show up. They speak with Dorthea, and they notice some soil that had been disturbed in her garden and asked if they could look around. And she's like, yeah, whatever. So they start rooting around and discover 7 bodies at various stages of decomp, mostly wrapped in sheets or tarps. So let me describe this lady to you. Think of a grandma from the 60s who baked cookies, probably liked cats. That's what she looked like. 59 years old, white hair pulled up into a bun, huge windshield-sized glasses covering her blue eyes, soft, saggy cheeks and jowls, conservative dress. She'd been running this boarding house for the disadvantaged for quite some time, and she just had to get. Let me show you what she looks like now. All right. So this is.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now just wait.
She looks like Betty White's mom, right?
Deranged sister or something?
Yeah, something.
Yeah. Okay, let me get back to my place here. All right, so let's... Got to find my spot.
Am I going to have nightmares? I feel like I'm going to have nightmares.
Well, I hope not. Hey, we have a clinician, so...
Well, and if she buried the bodies, and they're like, hey, can we take a peek in your garden back there? And she's like, she knows her back there, and she's all,
but remember,
sure.
She's well connected in the community, right? She's given to campaigns. She's.
I still feel like that's
so
really ballsy.
She thinks she's got insurance, right? So it's funny. What did you say, Betty who?
Betty White.
You said Betty White. I wrote down Betty Crocker.
Oh.
I said, so now imagine cops having this interaction with Betty Crocker. I'm sure they're not thinking this is our guy, right?
Yeah.
So 7 bodies were identified. Leona Carpenter, who was 78. Bert Montoya, who was 51. Dorthea Miller, 64. Benjamin Fink, who was 55. James Gallup, who was 62. Vera Faye Martin, who was 64. And Betty Palmer, who was 78. And one body had been there so long that the roots of a peach tree had curled around it.
Oh, I was just thinking, how good did that garden grow?
It was unfortunately
Very
very well fertilized. Right? Yeah. Yeah. So while the police were digging, Dorthea, in her sweet little old lady voice, asked if she could go down the block for a coffee. And she gave him the slip, the little shit. Like she...
She's like, and I'm out.
Yeah.
Vámonos.
Like, peaced out.
Or wrong word.
And so they hadn't thought she was a suspect of theirs at first, right? So... And she was just so disarming, this little old lady. So pretty sure they put 2 and 2 together and realized she'd given them the slip. And so they started looking. So now they're digging into her. So I'm going to go off on this tangent of what her life was like and what potentially led to this. Doesn't make it okay at all. But like we often say here, we're not making excuses for people, but... Crisis brain makes people do ridiculous things, and trauma can lead to crisis brain. And when people have had really hard lives, sometimes their brains can just never recover. So I'm not saying that's the case here. I'll let you decide what you think. But there's definitely some crap in this woman's history that is pretty terrible. So born January 1929, she was one of 7 children to 2 alcoholic parents. Story of the times. She had a very traumatic childhood. Her dad died of tuberculosis when she was 8, leaving her with an abusive mother who ended up losing custody of her and her siblings. And then mom dies in a motorcycle crash when Dorthea was 10. So, and we've talked about my cycles with my parents. And even when my dad was gone and not in the picture, deployed or whatever, I still missed him. I didn't like being around him, but I still missed him. So, imagine your parents dying at that age. And, so she's an orphan now. She's sent to live with several different relatives all over California, just kind of gets bounced around. 16 years old, she's going to take matters into her own hands. She'd become a sex worker at 16 in Washington. And so this is 1946, and she meets a man by the name of Fred McFall. He was a World War II veteran who had hired her for her sex services and then decided to keep her. So they got married in Reno. They had 2 daughters, but by 48, so just a couple years later, their marriage was over. Dorthea was put in jail for passing forged checks, and their children were taken away. I think one went to live with family, and then the other one was adopted out. 4 years after this, she marries a man named Axel Johansson. That's how they moved. That's how she gets to Sacramento. So they also didn't have a great marriage. And this husband had her institutionalized in 1961. I could not find details on why, but probably not hard to piece together.
Although chicken or egg, right?
Yeah, sure.
Is it possible that he put her in an institution without cause, but for maybe completely selfish reasons, and things that happened there turned
she'd already been a sex worker, and at this point she was also a madam and was operating a brothel.
So she was very much a lady of the night.
Yeah, she's definitely
She was,
getting her groove on.
Sorry, I threw you off.
I could see Karabeth's faces when she says things like that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so then she and Axel divorced in 66. Probably he had an issue maybe with her operating a brothel or being too tired to,
Oh gosh, well I
perform
can't
her wifely
imagine.
duties by the time she was done doing her thing. So 60.
My husband wouldn't be super supportive.
No, but
whatever.
I mean, that maybe was why he had her institutionalized. Maybe they could cure her of that. I don't know. Like, who knows? I mean, the thinking around sex work and all of that was so different back then, and the stigma. I mean, just
for sure.
So who knows? But 68, she marries yet another man, a guy by the name of Roberto Puente, who was a Mexican immigrant, 19 years younger than her. And he only married her straight up because he needed a green card, but she kept his name.
Like a Latin lover.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Roberto.
Well, that's funny. Weren't you guys going off on that yesterday?
Were we?
Juan Pablo.
Yeah.
Juan Pablo.
Juan.
Yeah. I thought Julie was reading a romance novel in her office. Team's got a little
Just
wild.
throwing random names out there.
Oh, so this marriage lasted for 2 years, and I think it was then and there that she found work as a nurse's aide, caring for disabled and elderly people in their homes. So like for private patients.
How does that work? Like, how do you go from like
They were
brothel,
checking.
madam,
Are you
and then
kidding
like,
me?
here's
Unless
my
you're
resume.
applying for
Can
the
I be a
FBI,
nurse?
they're not background checking you back then.
I mean,
Yeah.
well, lesson learned. This is probably why they do background checks.
Oh, yeah.
Folks.
Oh,
this
there's
is why you can thank Dorthea.
Yeah.
She did it. Jerk. No, they're there for a good reason.
Oh, they are there.
Just
for a good
behave.
reason.
Behave, folks.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Go
So
ahead.
her third marriage fails, and then she takes over a 16-bedroom care home in Sacramento as a business. She's like, taking care of the sick and infirm. Like, this is great business. And then in 1976, she marries her fourth husband, Pedro Montalvo, who is allegedly a very violent alcoholic. Once again, surprise, marriage doesn't last, ending in just a few months. And he says it was because of her spending habits. She would spend money like she was rich. So then she went to jail for a while for running the brothel. So she never got out of that work for quite a while. Okay, so now she has this big boarding house. She's out of jail. She's taking care of her tenants. She begins stealing from her tenants. She begins forging their benefits checks, cashing them in. And she was caught forging a check in 78, sentenced to 5 years, in addition to being forbidden from running a boarding house. So background check's going to come back up because she gets into the business again at some point here, and they're just like, oh, okay. So in jail, she strikes up a pen pal relationship with a 77-year-old retiree named Everson Gilmouth. And she had hooked up with him and opened a joint bank account when she was released from jail in 85 after serving only 3 years. So pen pal relationship developed into something so much deeper. This poor guy didn't know what hit him. So early 80s, we are now. She starts a cafe with investment help from her 61-year-old friend, Ruth Monroe. And the restaurant, she kept telling Ruth, wasn't making any money, so she'd go back to Ruth time and again for another cash infusion. Ruth's husband had already died, and she had a boyfriend at this time. But then the boyfriend died, and she didn't want to be alone, was really paranoid. And so she trusted her business partner, right? So she moved in to Dorthea's house with her. So
Dorthea must have been quite the charmer.
oh yeah,
That's what I'm thinking.
there's pictures
Yeah,
of
she
her
had
at like
tricks up her sleeve.
high rolling political events and dinner parties with the elite of Sacramento and whatever. Like she was a total poser. So Ruth moves in and then suddenly is just dead. And she had children, and her kids were like, we're not buying the excuses Dorthea is telling us. Dorthea kept saying that Ruth had been deeply depressed and suicidal after her boyfriend had died. But the coroner had found she'd OD'd on codeine and Tylenol. Okay. So the police believed Dorthea because of all of her community connections. They did not believe Ruth's son. And so Ruth's death was ruled a suicide. This we'll come back to this too. So now we're at 1982. She meets a guy named Malcolm McKenzie.
But Ruth wasn't in the backyard, right?
No, because they found
They
her.
knew her. They knew she was dead when she died.
Right.
Yeah.
They were able to
Yes.
do the autopsy
And they did the
find out. Like,
autopsy.
and
Yep.
Dorthea is the one that was
Just
like,
clarifying.
No, she was not buried in the backyard.
yeah.
But the kids are not buying
Convinced.
this.
Correct. Gotcha.
And there's pictures of Ruth, and she's just like she reminds me of my dad's mom, and just full of life, and she just looked like a generally happy person. Everybody's going to be sad after a loved one dies. It's not. I mean, that's a normal thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Dorthea in 82 meets a guy named Malcolm McKenzie, another elderly gentleman she picks up at a bar. So she had her MO. Julie's laughing. Yes, old women pick up dudes at bars, Julie.
She was a player.
He took her home.
Again, like the charm factor.
I know.
How do I get to
I
that?
mean, he takes her home. So 82. When did I
No.
say she was born?
Is it that hard with men, though, sometimes? I mean, right? Am I right? Right. Sometimes guys are a little...
1929. And now we're in 82. How many years is that?
I don't do math in my head.
So she was 53. And so Malcolm takes her home. And
How old was he? Does it say?
doesn't say. But he begins to feel strange. And he starts to become paralyzed.
Oh, no.
But he's not unconscious. And he watches her rob him.
Oh.
He can't move. So he reports it to the police after the drugs wore off. And during this same time frame, she would pass herself off as a medical doctor and provide her services to the elderly in their homes and take advantage of them. She would drug them and rob them and steal their checks. So she's just a vicious,
She is just no nothing.
nope. She just wants money.
Yeah, she sounds like she's
Money.
inside.
Yeah. So she was charged, convicted of theft in August of that year, and sentenced to 5 years in jail again. And after seeing this in the press, Ruth's kids reach out to the detective and said they believe Dorthea killed their mother. You need to look into this woman. They said that the last few days of their mom's life were very strange. She would have a drink in her hand, and she was not a drinker. She would say that Dorthea made these drinks to calm her nerves. And then the last time the son was told that his mom was resting, and he goes in to see her. And now knowing that this one guy had been paralyzed, that's probably what was going on. So mom's in bed and she was awake, but she couldn't talk.
Oh, shoot.
And he didn't understand. He didn't have that context and that information, so he didn't understand what was happening.
Yeah, because you wouldn't. I mean, if you've never experienced that or knew anything about it, you're not going to.
Right. And he also thought...
Make the assumption that the person who you trust is poisoning your loved one.
Right. But she also, remember what I told you about her pawning herself off as a medical practitioner.
Yeah.
So he thought she had some kind of medical training, so his mom had to be in good hands, even though he wasn't buying the suicide story, right? And his mom looked at him with tears rolling out of her eyes, he said.
that's
and
so
so like, she knew what was going on but could not communicate it.
Oh, can you imagine how terrifying that would be to be Ruth laying there and
Horrifying.
all you want to do is tell your son, like, I need help, and you
me.
can't?
And you can't.
That's
Do you
like those bad dreams that
remember-
you have sometime where you're like trying to scream and you're trying to run, but it's like slow motion and you want to be like, help, and you can't.
So speaking of child of the 80s, the Metallica video used to freak me out.
Yes.
Which one?
I don't remember the name of it.
I
I think it made me not a Metallica fan. No offense, Metallica, but it was the soldier who had no ability to talk anything, but he was still alive. That one.
Oh,
You know what I'm
One.
talking about. Probably, yeah.
yeah.
That's what it reminds me
You
of.
want me to quote all the lyrics? No.
Yeah, go. Sing
Can
it.
you?
Sing it. Yes.
I'm a huge
I
Metallica
think
fan.
the video scared me.
One of the best experiences of my life was being pulled up on stage and standing in the snake pit for a concert. So I was like this far away from Lars Ulrich for the whole concert. I ditched my friend. I'm just like, hell yeah, I'm getting on this stage. It was freaking incredible.
Sidebar.
Sidebar, love Metallica. All right. So next morning, they get the call, and Dorthea took everything, the money, jewelry, everything. So like everything Ruth had moved into the house.
Gone.
Yep, it was gone. So now we're in November 1985. Dorthea paid an alcoholic handyman to build, ready for this, a 6 by 3 by 2 foot storage box.
So, Mr. Handyman, don't question the. Like,
Well, he's an
dimensions
alcoholic.
of
I'm sure
that
she's
box.
feeding his habit, and
I mean, like,
yeah,
she's all, if you do this for me,
would
I
just
will
wait.
make your wildest dreams come true.
I mean, she was experienced.
this is
So,
right.
okay. So she later convinces the same handyman to dump this beautiful giant box that he had just built on a riverbank. It was probably heavier when he dumped it than when he built it, but I don't know if he was putting 2 and 2 together yet. He did not open it. So January,
He knew not to open it.
He probably
He's
knew
like,
not to.
ignorance is bliss.
I see the disturbed garden, the soil, and gnarly tree roots. Like I know something's
Peaches
going.
taste different.
Yeah.
No. Gross, Julie.
I am sorry.
Oh, I'm drinking peach
I
tea
know.
right now. Good grief.
What?
Oh, dang it.
There's a garbage can behind you.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
He knew something was wrong.
He knew
He's
something
not
was
that
wrong.
dumb. Nobody's
Well, and
that
how-
dumb.
Here's the deal.
Oh,
like,
just wait. I wrote.
how heavy is that?
Well,
You
I'll,
just chucked it? I mean, think about that. No, he knew
he
something
was
else was
probably
in there.
yeah. But I will tell you, we're going to be recording soon. Just stupid crimes episode.
Ew.
Some people are that stupid. You're gonna walk back those words. I promise
Okay.
you. There is crisis brain, and then there is also just pure idiocy.
Yeah.
So some of these
suppose.
you just yeah.
I'm sorry. No judgment.
Okay. Hey, intelligence is a spectrum, right? It's all a
Yeah,
spectrum.
it's a spectrum.
Okay.
It's a spectrum.
Okay. Some people are not blessed.
Right. That's true.
All right. So January 1st, 1986, it's New Year's Day. This fisherman's like out to get his New Year's Day fishing expedition on, and he sees this box.
I got a big one.
That's a horrible way to start a new year. What do you think about all of 1986 when that's what happens
I know.
on January 1st?
You
really-
treat it like leap day. You're like, this doesn't exist. We're going to do over.
We need to
Reset.
start the year over.
Control, Alt, Delete.
Am I still hungover? Oh, what's happening? So, fortunately, he reported it to authorities. Unfortunately, investigators find the badly decomposed and unidentifiable
I like it.
unidentifiable body of an elderly man. And it would take 3 years to identify him as the body of Everson Gilmouth. Okay. So until they identified his body, Dorthea continued to collect his pension,
Jeez,
and
of
she
course.
also forged letters to his family. She did this for 3 years. So his family thought he was alive.
Can you see? This is where like absolute psychopath comes.
Oh,
into
yeah,
play. Like,
psychopathy.
because it's like, how could you? How do you,
You don't
sleep at
care.
night?
You have no
This is-
conscience.
you must be
Right.
dead inside.
Yeah. Yep. And that sense of what you want and self-preservation is so strong. Having spent some years with a certified sociopath. Like, there's nothing there except for what they want. And it is so creepy. It's the creepiest thing ever.
That's scary.
So during this whole time, these 3 years, she continues boarding tenants, and social workers thought she was a godsend, especially for particularly hard-to-place clients due to issues like drug addiction and alcoholism, violence, or simply just the elderly and people with disabilities who had no place else to go. She would take them all.
Vulnerable people with limited choices.
Limited choices and limited abilities sometimes to understand what was happening to them.
Yeah.
Or if they did, as we saw in John's case, like he knew something was going on, but what are they going to trade? If they say something, now they're going to have no place and they're going to be on the streets or worse, right? Getting shock therapy or whatever. So just really took away those choices. She was charming, like you've said before, would give money to influential people, money she's stealing from the vulnerable people.
Yeah.
And all part of her grand facade of being an independently wealthy, sweet, grandmotherly-like figure who was just doing God's work in the community. So she had her shtick down to a science. So while her tenants were living there, she would read their mail. Of course, she'd take any money or Social Security checks they received, and she'd pay each of them monthly stipends, but keep the remainder for what she claimed were expenses for the boarding house. But neighbors started becoming suspicious when her handyman, so the drunk guy, starts digging in the basement and he's hauling dirt away. Like, I mean, you start pulling dirt out of your house, that's going to raise some eyebrows, right? And then he pours a concrete slab in the basement. And they become even more suspicious when he suddenly disappears. Nobody's safe with this woman. So meanwhile, tenants always seem to be disappearing. Social workers would come to check on them. They'd say, oh, just must have moved along due to their personal struggles. Which, I mean, we see it all the time here, right?
Yeah.
You know, some people do really well and thrive and others aren't ready for that stability yet. Their brains just can't get there. So they leave and they, you know, like they flee for a while and they come back because of those struggles and challenges. And so I'm sure social workers see this all the time. So
Like it was a plausible excuse.
It was absolutely plausible. Except for Judy, who knew that Bert wasn't going to do that. And Judy's the one who blew this whole thing open. So back to the day this all comes to a head. Police are there. They see that disturbed ground in the garden. They talk to the tenants who all say that Bert was still around but had left with a family member, which would not have happened. And then they were slipped a secret note by one of the tenants that read, "She wants me to lie to you."
Ooh.
This was rock star John Sharp, the one that Judy knew.
I just got the chills.
Yes.
So he knew he had to do something.
Escape artist.
Right? He's definitely a rock star. So as they're searching, Dorthea asked the detectives in her syrupy, sweet way if she could walk down to the coffee shop. And that's when she bolted to LA, where she immediately tried getting her hooks into another elderly retiree she meets in a bar. I mean, she's addicted, right? This is her lifeline. But because now there's wanted stuff over the news, he recognizes her and he turns her ass in. So she gets caught. So authorities are pulling all these pieces together. She was killing people over a span of 10 years.
That we know of.
They figured out she was on federal parole and running a boarding house was in violation of her parole. Shock.
You think?
No one was checking on. I don't know where the parole officers were, but they were not checking on this woman. Or if they did, it's just like, you want a cookie? You want to pet my kitten? And they're probably like,
You want to pet my kitten?
No, I'm not. I'm serious. This is true. So Judy goes to this house when she's interviewing to see if it's a good place for Bert, and she literally has a box of kittens that she's nursing.
What?
So I'm not making this up. This is not a stereotyping thing. This is part of her shtick. Okay. So she would poison their cakes that she would make for them with sleeping pills and tranquilizers and then smother them with a pillow while they slept. And presumably this is what she did to her friend Ruth. Her ATM machine is probably more like it. And then she would dismember their corpses and toss the remains into a mass grave in her garden. She'd hire ex-cons to do the digging for her. And then she was making $4,000 a month on cashing the Social Security checks of her victims. So that's what authorities were able to piece together.
Good grief. So how many Like,
I'll get to that.
okay.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know it's coming. So she put herself out there as this old lady.
Mm-hmm.
She put herself out there as 15 years or more older than she really was.
Huh.
And that's how she disarmed people. Neighbors were floored when they learned this. And they would smell things from around the house like, yeah. But she would explain it away. And you've got this little sweet old lady. And like, you're not thinking she's murdering and dismembering people. Like, you just wouldn't think that.
Is this
I mean,
like-
I would think that now, but
Who was the guy that was like was it Wisconsin? Like Milwaukee or whatever? Was that Dahmer that was chopping people up?
They
And,
were
like,
in his fridge and freezer.
Yeah, and like one of his neighbors could smell it or something.
Probably.
was that Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it?
I think it was, right?
Yeah.
Milwaukee?
I think so.
Yeah. Anyway, like, is this his mom? Like, how does
No,
this
she
happen?
wasn't eating them. She was just robbing
Killing them and robbing
Oh,
them.
Yeah.
Well, I forgot about that he...
So one of the tenants had worked in a mortuary before, so he knew what death smelled like, and he told authorities that the house smelled like death. So her trial begins in 1992. I never heard about any of this.
No, I didn't either.
I mean, of course, just out of high school, I was just doing drugs and stupid stuff, so I wasn't paying attention to world news. But so she was charged with a total of 9 murders, convicted of 3, and sentenced to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. So she was charged, so those 9 counts for the 7 bodies found in her house, in addition to Gilmouth, who was in the box, and then Montoya, who they didn't find. She was convicted, Ruth, I'm sorry, it was Ruth. She was convicted of 3 of the murders as the jury could not agree on the other 6, partially because of her little sweet grandma facade. And the trial was interesting because the prosecutor was really impassioned, asking the jury, what did they have? Like, they had their little social security checks, and they had their lives, and that was all they had, and she took those from them.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful. And they still couldn't figure it out and get it right. I've never sat on a jury, so that was probably insensitive, but
I can't imagine. Like,
she would
having
never
to-
confess, by the way. Never confess to killing these people. She would only confess to cashing their checks. They were sick, and they were going to die naturally anyway, so...
Did she give any excuses? Like, I don't know how they got there.
They were sick. They died naturally.
handyman.
So,
I mean-
they had resources. I'm just going to take them. She stuck to that story her whole life. She made $100,000 in total, taking all these lives. After a month of deliberation, jury returns a guilty verdict on 3 of the 9 counts, like I mentioned. They put her in prison forever, and she ended up, she died in prison March 2011 at 82 years old. She served 18 years. So back to Bert Montoya, who we started the story with. He had already been dealt a really difficult life, hand in life. And he was so happy when his social worker could tell him he had this nice place to finally live. Like it just, he did not deserve this fate. None of them did. But at least Judy went that extra mile to try to find him, because who knows how many other people would have been murdered.
Right.
So that's
I like
the
Judy.
story of. I just remember what you cracked me up over is you said, well, you can take the girl out of the. What'd you say?
I said, you can take the woman out of the brothel, but you can't take the brothel out of the lady.
Yeah.
Or out of the woman.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. But yeah, like,
So no, this was her livelihood. It's so disgusting and disturbing.
So how old was she when she died?
81.
So then she actually was an old lady, but she pretended to be old for years.
Because it gave her a pass. No one was going to suspect her. She was 82 when she died.
Most of us go the other way, right? We always want to look
Oh, yeah.
younger.
Like,
Kicking and
Absolutely.
screaming. Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, it was all part of her ploy,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
But I'm
Well,
just saying.
remember that-
I wouldn't have thought of
Was
doing
it
that.
husband number 2, I think, that or 3, I don't know, maybe it was 4. One of them that said she was just interested in being rich. She was just interested in money. Like she was spending them out of their marriage, essentially. So whatever that security meant to her, like the means to the end did not matter.
Fascinating.
Did not matter.
But even so, like, I just feel like, so when did all this take place? You said
Mostly
it was like
the
80s and 90s?
Like she was convicted in 92.
Yeah, okay. Because I'm just thinking, like, I mean, even then, I mean, she wasn't really like a high roller pulling in that stuff, was she?
Nope.
It's crazy.
No,
Like she had an absolute
lot to go
sickness
through for $4,000 a month.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
she just didn't want to work.
Yeah.
I mean, because sex work, I'm sure, was hard work. And, running a brothel,
Yeah.
managing sex workers was probably hard work. And this was easier. I mean, dismembering bodies compared to sex work. I mean, come on.
I don't know.
I know.
No.
Yeah. But where the hell was the parole agent?
Right? He's hanging out with the
Well-
background check people.
I was just going to say,
Probably.
in the same place as all the other people who could have probably looked into things a little bit more and stopped it
Or
sooner.
just looked into things.
Right. And the fact the house smelled,
do your job.
guaranteed I'd walk into that house and be like, I don't know if it's an animal or a person,
Yeah.
but something is dead in here.
Yeah.
Oh.
That is the most awful smell.
Oh.
I have never smelled a dead body, but I've smelled like rotting dead deer carcass, and it's not.
Or even like a mouse gets in a random place and you're like,
Oh,
it's
yeah. I've
awful.
smelled that. It is horrible.
It's a horrible smell.
It's horrible. It's so putrid.
Yeah. I've smelled a rotten egg once too.
That's
Like,
also
also
horrible.
disgusting.
horrible. Yeah. It's right in the same lines.
Ugh.
Anybody hungry?
Well, now that we've lost all our listeners because they're probably throwing up in their mouths. Yeah, sorry about that. Thank goodness smells don't.
Permeate the
Permeate through,
airwaves.
It just makes me think, like, with her train of thought, though, like, even with her background at the brothel and all of this sex work, right? How did this get to taking advantage of, like, how did that lead to taking advantage of these elderly people, right?
I think it was like, okay, so I can go into their homes unsupervised and they're helpless. They have what I need. They're not using it because they're sick or they're unable to really take care of themselves. So what good are these resources to them? And I think it probably just escalated from there.
It was easier.
Yeah,
I
people
would
that
guess,
no
than-
one has to care for them.
Yeah.
Nobody is looking for them in most cases. People that society is not really looking out for, but for those few gems out there,
like Judy.
like Judy.
Judy. Thank you, Judy.
Yeah, and John,
Yeah.
But yeah, and even the handyman, I mean, good Lord.
Well, but that's where I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like, is there, like, was she feeling like somewhat like she had power over these situations and these people and like, like there had to have been something. And then, or is it coming from like a survival mode? Like, this is just how she's choosing to survive now.
I have no idea, and we're never going to know. But when you look at those pieces of all of that trauma in her young life, never feeling secure, never feeling like she had a place, and then she finds something that is somewhat stable and meets those needs, whatever those needs are for her. And then she just kept expanding from there. It's kind of similar to when we did the Amelia Beyer, the baby farmer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's just like trauma, 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 trauma. And if you don't get that addressed, it is going to lead to something, not necessarily killing vulnerable people or being a serial killer or farming babies, but it's going to lead to something, a breakdown, something's, it always will, criminal or not, who knows, but, mental health, I mean, your brain is your brain. It has to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Has to be, these things do not typically resolve themselves.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's her trajectory or she was just born a sociopath and you could do this and kill. And it was like, hey, it's just people. It's just whatever. Like no feelings, no empathy, no compassion.
The fact she never admitted to anything would indicate that to me.
Yeah.
Because I think even people who she could have used some of her younger life experiences to make a case.
I'm a victim here.
The fact that she doesn't sound like she even tried. Now, maybe they did if you read court transcripts, but without that, I would say, I don't know.
No, I think she just flat out didn't care.
Yeah, because admitting it would kind of mean that there'd be some remorse.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which clearly.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a break. Let's come back and let our minds escape to someplace else that smells good, that's happy. We'll be right back.
Not peaches.
Okay. Want to change your community for the better just by donating your change? Round up for One Heart. You can help move people out of poverty and into a better quality of life simply by rounding up your debit or credit card purchases and choosing One Heart, a place for hope and healing, to receive your donation. Visit oneheartrc.org and click the Roundup button at the top of the page. That's oneheartrc.org. Be the change by donating your change. Start rounding up for One Heart today. 3, 2, and 1.
5, 6, 7, 8.
I thought we were
Welcome
on.
back.
We are on. Are we on? I thought we've been on.
We're always on.
You're just going to start again?
We're always on. Well, that's how I know how to be, like, where to cut it.
Oh.
Coming out of a...
You're going to cut this?
I do cut it a little bit.
That was some good stuff. Apples.
Oh, I'm going to... Oh, it'll be a bonus episode. Don't you worry. Don't you fright. You are just fine. The whole world will hear that.
Oh, good. Good.
Yes.
Welcome back to the Escape Pod. Where
aren't
we
you all
cannot
glad
keep it together today?
that we invited Karabeth to the Escape Pod? Aren't you glad you escaped with us?
I am glad I escaped with you. Even if it's my first and last, I'm glad to be here.
Oh, no. We'll bring you back again. We'll bring you back. Because you made a really horrifying story a little bit hilarious. So we appreciate
Also made Julie laugh today. She wasn't laughing this morning. So
I had a bad start to my day. So it's pretty bad when double stamp day at the nearest coffee shop is what makes you happy.
Yeah.
I literally was like, well, that's some good news. Because I've had...
double stamp day never makes me happy because of
You don't get to hardly drink
can't
anything.
have caffeine.
I know.
That's like the saddest thing. And you go into a coffee shop and that's what you smell. That's what you want. And then it's like,
Can you just give me a peppermint tea, please?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you say it like that
sometimes.
to Alyssa?
Sometimes. Now lately it's steamers. It's like, okay, can we just pretend I'm kind of grown up and make me
I
a
like those.
flavored milk thing? But then I don't really like the taste of milk. So then I've got that milk taste in.
Can you do like a
I don't
coconut
drink.
milk or something?
Yeah, probably I can. I just have to experiment. I don't want to. That sounds like work. And
I don't like the name steamer. It makes me think of poop. Like, right? Like Stanley Steamer. What was it? Like on the poop episode that Chad called it? Like the...
Shart art?
Well, not shart art, but he called it like the Chicago chunker, like the... I don't even know. Colombian steamer. There was something.
the stomper. Are you thinking of the
Oh,
pretty
waffle
sure he-
stopper.
stomper?
Well, I'm going to have to listen to it again. I'm pretty sure there was a steamer in there
You think
somewhere.
so?
It stuck with
Maybe.
me.
Well, knowing Chad, probably there was.
Where are you escaping to? Do you have, I always say it doesn't have to be a place. It can be a mindset. It can be something very simple, or it can be a place if you actually get to go someplace. I just usually don't.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I feel like for me, just being able to kind of like, I escape every day. I live on a little house out in the prairie. So, like, it's quiet out there. We can see the stars. When there's northern lights, I get to see them. Like, I don't hear dogs bark. So it's kind of like we have kind of like our own.
You don't hear dogs barking, really?
No. I mean, the wind has to blow.
No,
a
I
certain way.
mean
Really?
your dog.
Well, no. Chloe doesn't actually bark.
No, dude.
Dude's annoying. Like,
Yeah.
dude. He's cute,
Where he got
though.
his name.
That is where I got his name.
It's so lucky
But
he's
no,
cute,
We
right?
moved him off the record. We moved him out with Chloe, but they're so much happier.
Oh,
and
good.
now I don't have to hear him throw. He doesn't bark.
I thought you were going to say
Really?
you sent him to the farm, quote
that's what I
unquote.
thought you were gonna
So
say, too.
I'm really glad he just went to the...
He's out in the backfield.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
this story
sick.
probably gave KB ideas. She's going to Puente the poor dog.
People are gonna see me digging holes and be like, "Oh no!"
Well, you don't
She
have neighbors, so
loves
nobody's going
that
to see any
dog. She
disturbers
just gets
out there.
angry at that dog.
I
That's
walk
all.
him every day.
Two different things. Where are you escaping to, Miss Charity?
Well, this is going to come out well after this happens, but the Journey concert.
Ooh.
Oh, that's fun. I
I've
like
never
it.
seen them live, so it'll be a first and probably a
Really?
last.
I've got
Don't stop
family that's
believing.
good. Don't stop
I love it so much.
believing.
No, it should be a really good show.
Also, speaking of the 80s, man, they're making a comeback today here in the Escape Pod. I am just get to escape to my house tonight, which might not sound super exciting, but I am telling you people, I looked at the calendar one day and I think it's the third time this month, and we're on February 29th.
The day that doesn't matter.
Third time this month that I've gotten to go home after work and stay home after work. 3 times.
That wears me down too.
Yeah.
Like when I look at those weeks and I have something every night of the week after work.
Yep.
And I'm just like, and they're usually fun, great, amazing things. And it's just like, but it just adds up. And I'm like,
Mine is just taking
I
kids places
love to stay
most
home.
of the
Yeah.
time.
Oh,
If it were actually like social events, it might be different, but it's either meetings or just taking kids places. And it just was an especially busy month. So I get to escape to home tonight.
It's so nice.
I might go right after this. So thank you for tuning in. We could not do this without our listeners. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend who you also think might enjoy it. We are just the 3 of us who make this happen. Operating, writing, researching, producing, promoting the show on our own in the hopes that we can build a community of escape artists. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps grassroots efforts like ours gain more exposure. Check out our website at escapepod.live. Follow us on our socials. Reach out at justbecause@escapepod.live. Or if you are an escape artist, share your story that we might be able to use in a future episode at escapeartist@escapepod.live. Don't ever make that a drinking game to say escapepod.live. That would be
that
bad.
just gave me an instant headache thinking of shot.
Yeah,
Shot.
there's
No,
a lot
let's
of
not do that.
escapepod.lives in there.
Yeah, and just, I'm sure you're listening to this and you know somebody who has overcome something in their life or is working towards that. Like, let's help connect them with other people. Let's, we do have some guest episodes coming up with some pretty incredible stories of escape and what that process looks like, and we just want to share those stories with everybody and build that sense of community and hopefully inspire other people who don't think they have a choice or a voice or a way out, that they absolutely can do this and they can make those changes.
For sure. Karabeth, thank you. We are closing the hatch on this episode of the Escape Pod. Remember, trauma may be inevitable. How you grapple with it is optional.
So stay resilient
and keep laughing.